Hi, I'm Introved, and my only hook for you is that I've got some books to review today. Most of them are soft copies, so I'll be reading out their names and all from the list that I have got here. So, the first one is Guardian Angels True Stories of Answered Prayers by Joan Weston Anderson. Now, this is a very unusual kind of book. I'm sure most of you do not reach out to these kinds of spiritual books. But then I was feeling a little low, and two of the books that I picked up at that time, this was like one of those. So, this book is about angels answering prayers. Yes, we keep hearing about guardian angels around us all the time, and what I've read about them is they're keen to help you out in case you ask for it. So then there are so many stories and beautiful ones at that, very touching and very sweet stories wherein people were helped in some way or the other, and they feel that their angels answered their prayers. And why they were convinced was probably because of the unusual ways in which their prayers were answered. So, very touching, very beautiful stories, a very light read. So, if you are into those kind of books, then you can really go for this one. The second one that I picked up was The Amazing Results of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, of course. His previous book, one of the bestsellers, The Power of Positive Thinking. I have a dog eared copy of that with me, and every time I feel low, I always go back to that book. So I thought, let me pick up something else. What else does he have to say about positive thinking? So I picked up this one, and it didn't disappoint me as well. Now, here, what he shares is what's unique is in the previous book, he had shared the power of positive thinking, talks about his own personal experiences with people and what he suggested to them and how they came back to him with positive results, of course. But this book is more about, people reaching out to him with what kind of techniques did they employ to think positively in their lives and how it impacted them. So this was something that was unique. So there are many techniques that he shared in the book which are from the people, basically not coming from him. So in the book, there are so many extracts from the letters that he had received from the people, and it's always interesting when there's this human and this personal touch somewhere in the book. I mean, you can kind of relate to whatever is written then, and it doesn't seem like a lecture or just a piece of prose, coming from someone. Okay, the third book that I picked up was The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. It's one of the very famous books by this American author. It was written, I think it was first published in 1905. And it talks about the American society of those times. See, we keep on harping about how women have been downtrodden in India for so long, but then we rarely talk about how the European and American women were also treated in their times. I mean, they got their voting rights very late in life. Then there were no hereditary rights also. The funny thing was that they used to bring all that dowry. They had to have that kind of property and amount to give to the groom, but then everything was immediately taken care of and inherited by the man. I mean, she basically had no control over any kind of property or any kind of assets. So she was always dependent on a husband or a son or a kind of society from which Lily Barton, the heroine, comes from. I mean, it's no wonder that this entire time she's a pretty woman, she's an intelligent woman, and deep down she nurtures this ambition also to start something of her own and be independent. But then she's always running after this man and another, whereas her heart pulls her in a different direction. But the problem is that that man is not rich enough, and she's used to luxuries. So then she's forced to, get into society, uh, take dates also, get her dresses made, and had that kind of lifestyle which she could not afford in reality. So it's a tragic end, of course. Towards the end, she has to face the music, because she could have married one of the good ones out there that were available, the bachelors. But then her heart was not in it, and it was really sad to see society forcing her to go down that road really. So sometimes I feel like reading books which resemble, in the storyline to something that was there in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So I was craving for this one, and it was on my TBR for a really long time. So I thought, let me pick it up and read it for once, and it didn't disappoint me. It's very similar in its plot, by the way, to The Age of Innocence, also written by Edith Wharton. They go along similar lines, similar stories, but then it has a charm of its own, I would say. So you can read it if you have a taste for classics. Now, moving on to the autobiography of My Life in Full by Indra Nooyi. Indra Nooyi is best known as the president, once upon a time, a president of PepsiCo. And when I started reading her autobiography, I was really impressed, and I was really taken in, and I was really inspired. But then she started talking about how she had to prove herself at every point. She had to compete with all the men out there, and she had to work doubly hard. Now, what's the problem with that, you might say? The only problem was that she was a woman, all right, amongst all of those men. So she had to prove herself, and you know what? This book left me feeling really sad towards the end, because she's constantly trying to prove herself in a newer role, in a new company, in a better role, and so on and so forth. She was a sort of a workaholic, the way she comes across, I mean, through her autobiography. Uh, what I felt sad about really was that she always devoted more time, energy, and effort to her work than her children. And this is really tragic at times. I mean, her children might not feel bad about it now, but then she talks about those times when one of her kids was really ill and she had to fly here and there for an urgent business meeting. Fortunately, she had a life partner who was very supportive through and through, and that is why she managed with the help of her extended family members. So they pitched in at times. At one point of time, she had a very good neighbor. So yes, to each his own. I mean, I'm not judging her or anything, but I'm feeling a little sad, because when you have family, someone, at least one of them has to buckle down and give that kind of time and attention to the child. This one small incident I'm always reminded of. I don't know where I read it, in the book, or I think somewhere other than the book, where Indra talks about, selling old furniture, and there was a table she was about to sell. One of the daughters says that, Mama, how can you get rid of this table? Don't you remember? When you used to be in the office late into the night, going through your own work and files and all, I used to sleep right at your feet under the table. So that was very sweet and touching, and I felt really sad about that. Hats off to the woman, her passion comes across. She's definitely a workaholic, and yes, the point is that you cannot go forward in your career as a woman if you're not willing to make all those sacrifices. So that is one sad truth. So many women have to take a back seat in their careers whenever they choose to have children. And it's the same time biologically also. It's similar timing. It's bad timing, I would say. It's the time to have kids, and it's the time when you're actually getting growth in your career, and that is the time you take a break. And then when you try to go back into the system, then you are exploited. You are hired, you're rehired, of course, but then you're often exploited. And that's the reason we don't have so many women leaders out there. So this book, got me thinking along a lot of lines, and how can things be better, and how can working conditions be made better for women if they choose to have families, that is. Because men don't have to sacrifice all that much ordinarily, and a lot is expected from women, so that's not fair. There was another little cute book I read some time back. I was really intrigued by the title, and much later I observed that this was a book meant for children, but I, as an adult, really enjoyed it. I would recommend it highly to all my students out there. And the book is called How to Read Literature Like a Professor by Thomas C. Foster. This person is an English professor, of course, and the kind of pointers he has given in the book on how to understand what you're reading and how to read between the lines so well, because he asks the readers to pick up on these little hints that are dropped by the authors and poets all the time. For example, consider the setting. When there is an intense scene, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but then there's often this something to do with the weather. There are clouds out there, it's raining, there's thunderstorm, so it matches the mood of the main characters in the story. So these kind of hints he talks about. So he asks the readers to look at the weather, consider the setting where the characters are, what's happening in the background, like who's playing second fiddle, how are they contributing to the role of or the main character in the story. So all of these little nuances, I really enjoyed reading it. He had written it like a storybook, and like I said, much later I looked at it and discovered it was meant for children, but I really enjoyed it. So anybody can read it. I highly recommend this book to everyone. Last but not the least, finally I have a hard copy. Let me show it to you. It is Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. Sinek, I don't know. They don't pronounce our names very well, so I don't feel obliged to pronounce theirs correctly as well. So whatever. So it's Simon. Let's stick to Simon. Alright, so this book was, I would say, an eye-opener for me. I thought it would be just about leadership, but it is not exactly restricted to leadership. It talks about leadership, of course, in corporate sector primarily, but then it also talks about leadership in society, in politics, in school system, and even at home. So how you're supposed to lead, even if you're leading a small group. I think anybody who is leading anyone else, it's a must read for them all, because it gives beautiful insights. And the best part is that there are stories all the time. Here and there he talks about the anecdotes, then he gives examples from the American business world, and even about Marines. So all of those stories and anecdotes are very interesting to read. For example, he talks about the attack on the Taj in, I think, 2008. So that is also mentioned. So the thing primarily that he says is that the sad part is that the corporates these days are treating people as just numbers. People who can be exploited, people who can be just laid off, and not as human beings. So there is no community building, there is no work being done on culture. So much so that it has become so competitive out there that people are, more or less pitted against each other. Now, what happens when you're pitted against each other? You're always stressed out, and you don't give your best when you're stressed out. You're always looking out for ways to do one better than the other, and that is not a good culture to have. So what happens to these kind of companies and corporates eventually? That also he has explained through a number of examples, how the companies where employees are treated as people who are meant to be valued has been explained really well. Then another aspect I found, I'm too late in reading this book in that respect, is all about parenting. So where exactly did we go wrong? That was very interesting to read about in the book. Like, there is this great golden age that he calls, the ones who saw the Great Depression and the world wars, and they believed in each other and working together and building a culture, living in a community, sacrificing for each other. But then came the boomers, and boomers were the privileged lot. So because the golden age had suffered so much, they ensured that boomers had a good life. And then the boomers have been spoiling the other generations, and so on and so forth. So eventually all the generations consecutively are feeling more and more privileged, more dissatisfied about their lives. We as parents and teachers, we rush in to save children from the consequences of their actions, which is really horrible, because we are not teaching them on how to take decisions in life, how to accept responsibility for their actions, which is a very important life skill. And that is why Everywhere there are problems now, which will be escalating further. So there are examples like these through anecdotes. He is trying to explain his point and how it's affecting not just the corporates but people at large, because eventually those same people are part of communities and nations. See, I like this book so much that I have prepared some posts on it, which I thought, I should break it down into small bite-sized chunks and then share it with everyone else. So the busy people who cannot get down to reading or who find reading boring at least can understand what was the basic premise of the book. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed these book reviews. More to come in the next few days. So till then, take care and catch you soon.